I like the rain. It keeps everybody inside and washes everything clean.
Hello and welcome to the Cavern of Terror.
Joyride 2 Dead Ahead stars Nikki Acox, Laura Jordan, Nick Zano, Kyle Schmid, Mark Gibbon, and is directed by Louis Morneau. Dead Ahead starts out showing us a not-so-dead Rusty Nail who's back to his old murderous ways. This transitions to showing Melissa and Kayla heading off to Vegas with their boyfriends. Things take a frightening turn when they borrow a car. That just happens to be owned by Rusty Nail. So how's the acting? It's pretty bad, guys. But on a slasher scale, I'd say it's okay. But it's nowhere near as good as the first film. Nikki Acox is a passable lead, but she's nothing to write home about. Seriously, first Bobby, now Meg? I really can't get away from these supernatural references. I swear I'm not doing this on purpose. Sometimes I felt like she was overacting, especially during the dramatic scenes. No! I actually prefer her supernatural performances rather than this one. On that show, she's a lot more subdued. I'm not saying she's terrible though. Her character does evolve and you grow to like her eventually, but I have seen better work from her. Unfortunately, that better work was from 3 years before this film. Laura Jordan is solid in her role as Melissa's sister, Kayla. During the first act, you don't really expect much from her character, but they did throw a couple curveballs at me that had me like this. You're alright. Nick Zano, though, as Bobby, is just kind of there. He's a generic good guy boyfriend character. He really doesn't get a chance to show us his personality. At most, I'd say he's in this film for about 20 minutes. Okay, I have to say this, and it's probably a very unpopular opinion, but I think the biggest standout in Joyride 2 is Nick, played by Kyle Schmid. Yeah, I know he's a douche nozzle, but his character really does have the most depth out of the whole bunch. He had to carry the weight of comedic timing, and he absolutely nailed it. At a certain point, he becomes a completely different character and pulls it off flawlessly. The new Rusty Nail isn't as good as the menacing Ted Levine, but Mark Gibbon nails the creepy factor. He's a rock-solid replacement, because not only does he do the physical portrayal of Rusty Nail, he also does the voice. Rusty Nail is also a much more sadistic killer in Dead Ahead. The things he does here are just plain brutal. I also thought that the cinematography of Robert C. New and Scott Williams was a huge contributing factor to the smooth transition of Rusty Nail from the first Joyride to the sequel. His face was constantly in shadow or hidden under the bill of his hat. Unfortunately, most of the menace goes into Rusty and not so much into his truck. Let me explain. I'm all for the killer himself to be badass, but his truck has to be equally terrifying. Let's put it this way. The first Joyride had a perfect blend of tension and badassery. They did this by not showing Rusty Nail until the third act. The other two acts were supported by a diesel-powered killer. Here's the problem with Dead Ahead. They pour all the horror into Rusty Nail and they neglect his ride. As far as the score goes, I really wasn't a fan of Joe Kramer's work here. It's a perfectly fine score, but I don't think it matches up with the editing of Mike Jackson. There were some sequences where the editing was fast-paced, but the score was the opposite, and vice versa. There's also some comedy found here. Most of it comes from Nick, especially during the morgue scene. However, the comedy that didn't involve Schmid's Nick character kind of felt out of place. It just didn't flow for me. In the end, guys, I'm gonna have to give Joyride 2 Dead Ahead a I'll admit it to you, I really wasn't expecting much from this sequel, but I was pleasantly surprised here. Dead Ahead was placed with a very difficult task. They had to replace the series killer with a new actor, and live up to a legendary voice. If you ask me, I think they pulled it off. Another huge plus is the upped brutality of Rusty Nail, even though his truck kind of takes a back seat. Like I said, I didn't think I was going to dig this sequel as much as I did, but I'm gonna have to recommend it. I could definitely see myself popping this one in after watching the original. Alright guys, that has been my review of Joyride 2 Dead Ahead. What did you think? Let me know down in the comments down below. If you liked this review, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see my review of Joyride 3 Roadkill, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you can see that video and all of my future content. Also hit that bell button. That way you get notified every time I put out a new video. I plan on getting Joyride 3 to you guys as soon as possible so we can finally get started on my Scream series. I would appreciate it guys if you check me out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LetterBoxd. But most importantly guys, I'm Zach. This has been the Cavern of Terror. Stay metal my friends.